How's everyone doing? First of all, on this Christmas Eve, the night before Christmas, went all to the house. Not a Republican was stirring, not even a mouth. Hey, what's up, people? This is Bob Gomes bringing you the Concerned Forum. And just to do a little housekeeping, I really appreciate it if you folks would subscribe to my channel, number one, and number two, indicate if you like the show or don't like it. And by the way, please put your comments. Now, this is my first Christmas in Africa. Yeah. Like I keep telling you, but I just, go over here in June. Um, I'm not, I'm used to not being at home for the holidays. 25, what? Yeah, 25, 26 years in the military. So missing a Thanksgiving or Christmas or being somewhere else when you want to be at home, that's not strange to me. However, actually living here in Uganda, uh, this is a nice experience. I'm married to a very pretty lady, so I even have my own little tree here. And later on this evening, we're going to sit in front of the tree and sip a little scotch and bring in Christmas Day. Uh, Aside from that, let's pluck this chicken. Uh, I see so much happening back home. And I already know who I'm planning to vote for. Yeah, I'm still a citizen of the USA, and I'm still a registered voter. And you're damn right, I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. Now, one of the things that disturbs me, besides Donald Trump, is his vice president. The great man who thinks that he's going to be our next president. If that's the case, as they say on the streets, we're fucked. Okay? Um, because I get the impression that all this guy wants to do, he seems intent upon trying to create a situation where we're going to literally have race riots. Um, I guess what I'm trying to say, and it's not because of his background, okay, right? But the things that he says, he is definitely not one to try and unite the country or to help Americans become aware of the new geopolitical realities of the world. I think that this phony immigration debate, I think it's a large part of what's really hurting us now. Um, let me know in your comments because I have one question. Now, we have seen this Trump thing about mass deportation. We've seen children dragged out of nursery schools. We've seen women, men, uh, quite a few who happen to be American citizens. Their only crime is that they look Latino. And I just want to know, and I want to talk, I'm specifically talking to all you good people in places like Oklahoma, Arkansas, West Virginia, Mississippi, Louisiana. With all this massive deportation and inhumanity and cruelty, has anybody got an increase in their paycheck? I just want to know, you know, because if you're going to condone this kind of animalistic behavior and hatred. I mean, what, these ICE people. I understand now. A lot of these guys, they get them out of trailer parks, basically. Nazi youth groups, and so on and so forth. And what is it? Oh, and yeah, I do consider, what is it, Turning Point? Yeah, that's a racist youth group here in America, which they have a right to do. Don't get me wrong. Say, but I just wonder, are you satisfied as Americans with the image that this projects around the world? Because I can tell you, as an American living in a foreign country, I'm embarrassed as hell. I am ashamed as hell. And I don't want, I don't need anybody to start running this garbage about, oh, it's not bullshit. I did my time, unlike your orange headed president. Okay? So we're not even going to go there. But I'm just wondering, how do you expect to do business on the planet where you are like just barely 4% of the planet's population? I don't get that. My personal opinion, I used to think that any uh, Latin American or African nation would be crazy as hell to try to do any kind of deals with this present administration. But I have to revise that because I think that any, aside from Russia, which we know Russia has deep meat hooks in the Trump, but aside from that, I think any European nation, any nation in their right mind would not do a deal with a crazy person. See, it's the thing about this whole white supremacy thing that this administration seems to be pushing, this crazy narrative. Um, when you got that, when people have that bullshit in their bloodstream, they just don't stop. See, you know, today, remember that this whole thing started trying to hunt down Mexicans, then the Cubans, then Venezuelans, right? Latin people, and of course, black Haitian people. Now they're after black African people, and a lot of my black American sisters and brothers who just were sitting on their ass saying, "Oh, well, they're here illegally, so yeah, let them be thrown in the back of vans by masked men." Um, I tell you, you got a certain segment of the black American population that's brain dead. Because anytime you see a government using those type of tactics on any group of people, it stands to reason sooner or later those tactics will be used upon you. Now, I don't want anybody to get it twisted. Um, I wasn't running away from anything when I left in June. I thought that I was running to something. I reached the age where I was trying to basically find out who I was. You know, I know that my people came from this continent, and I wanted to, deal with that. Um, I also wanted to try and have like a second career, do a little media work or what have you. And, one thing has worked out so far. Got a nice wife. Can't knock that. But that's what it was all about. Because when I left, like, what was it, June 19th, the madness of the Trump regime, I mean, it was like percolating with executive orders and stuff like that. But it wasn't this mass thing about sending um, these, criminals. I understand a lot of the ICE guys have criminal records that were overlooked, things like that. And it wasn't really going on, you know. But then after I'm here for a month or so, I start looking at the news and thinking, my God, what the hell is going on? So I have people walking up, who know me in the area or have gotten to know me in the area, and they ask, you know, Robert, what the hell is happening to your country? you know, and I give them one word, Trump. But I also point out that Trump is just a symptom of the disease. Um, I believe that the greatest threat to American democracy is racism. Mm. Now, I don't want to mess this up because I know a lot of Democrats, they say, well, hey, no, no, no. Don't get on this thing about race. It's the economy. And I agree, right? It was people's economic concerns that propelled the Republican Party back to the White House and the Congress. But the whole economic racial thing is interlinked, right? You didn't vote for the black Asian lady because you felt that she, by nature of who she was, would not be able to deal with the economy. Now, I think the question that we need to ask ourselves as Americans is, okay, what made you think that a convicted felon, I mean, this guy, Trump, has been convicted for just about everything, right? Falsifying business records, lying, in court, not paying his employees, and on and on and on. Oh, and let's not forget that little matter of leading an insurrection to basically burn down the United States Capitol. And that is who you felt would be better to handle the economy than a lady that has been what, a DA, State's Attorney General, United States Senator, and Vice President. So yeah, economy, yeah, played a huge role in what people thought in terms of, who would solve our problems. But the racial aspect comes in because you felt that, excuse me, the racial and gender aspect came in because you didn't think that a black female would be up to the task. Now, listen, I don't want anybody thinking I'm carrying water for anyone. Okay, I'm kind of, excuse me, I'm kind of beyond that. But I think that the powers that be, the mechanisms of the Democratic Party at that time caused her to run a lousy campaign. Should have been the primary, right? Uh, Biden should have gotten up off his ass and left a hell of a lot sooner than he did. And basically, what he did, he handed her a hot mess. See? And I'm sorry to say that, especially some male members of the black community, dropped the ball coming out of a community that should know better. They put themselves on the line for Donald Trump. Same thing with the Latino community. Um, it's good to see that Latinos are coming back to the Democratic Party and that black men have come back for the most part to the Democratic Party. But it's kind of a little like closing the barn door after the cows and the horses have left, you know? Oh, will they do better next time? I don't know. We'll see. We'll even see if there is a next time. But this is, see this whole idea of white supremacy. And I'm going to tell you something. And I mean, I've been around all kinds of people, 25, 26 years in the military. You come across all kinds of people, all colors of people. You go all kinds of places, right? And right now, the white working class is suffering. And I will tell you, quite frankly, what is killing, and I mean this literally, because you talk about, young males committing suicide, ODing, alcoholism. What is it, like between 17 and 40 something? I mean, it's weird when you sit down and actually look at the figures in comparison with the other, you know, uh, highly industrialized technical countries in the world. America is in very bad shape. And I will tell you, the thing that is killing white folks, oh my goodness, especially in rural America, is white supremacy. Seriously, that's what's killing them. I mean, I keep saying it, like on YouTube, you got people coming up saying, hey, how come in America we can't have nice things? Well, the reason is because we have a structure here that's been set up to say, oh, well, you don't want to be like those blacks. I mean, back in the day, it was, you don't want to be like them blacks and them Puerto Ricans, right? At that time, Puerto Rican was basically used, anybody that was Latino, you were Puerto Rican, right? Yeah, because all they wanted to do was make babies and lay around on welfare. See? So anytime someone came, oh, well, we could do something uh, to help women who want to work but have children. Maybe we can do something with some kind of state funded or federally funded daycare so that these women can go work and still be productive, in the economy. And no, that's giving away stuff. You sound like one of them black or Latino people, black or Puerto Rican people. And then you say, well, listen, what about healthcare? Healthcare in the halls of the mighty, healthcare was not an issue until Obama came to the White House. Now, I want people to know this and understand this. You know, one of the good things about getting older, especially from my viewpoint as a guy, uh, you start thinking a little bit more than just reacting. Number one, and number two, you have you're not supposed to fall for the bullshit. Now, of course, it helps if you have some kind of decent basic education before you take that step into getting older. But none of these people, all right, below 40 or 45 can tell me a damn thing. Because for a lot of it, I was there, right? I grew up in the civil rights movement and the Republican Party. Oh yeah, yeah. Richard Nixon, who was our first major photo person for the civil rights movement. You saw him with Life and the other man, Time. Who was it? Martin Luther King, right? Ah, wrong answer. Richard Nixon. In 1958, Richard Nixon was considered a civil rights champion across America. Yeah, see. That's the Republican Party that my parents were a part of. Eisenhower, Nixon, Dirksen, folks like that. The early Bob Dole. Unfortunately, what has happened, and see, this is my pet peeve with conservatives, because unfortunately, remember, what's the key word with conservatives, right? What's the key thing with them? Slow or at best gradual change. See, and every time, especially in Western societies, right? Every time it is always, oh, I should also say Latin American societies as well. The conservatives are always the one, and I'm not, I'm not trying to be unkind, but let me say this: conservatives, unfortunately, especially in modern times, they have the very bad habit of opening the door for the fascists. Seriously. Hey, who supported Adolf Hitler on his way up? Conservatives, right? I mean, I think that's my best example. And the only time that that doesn't happen is when you have strong conservative leadership. Now, back in the 60s, you had people like Bill Buckley, who was he was an associate of my old man. And that guy was so witty, so erudite, mm, so intelligent. I mean, even when you were sitting on the opposite side of the table arguing against him, you couldn't help but smile and say, damn, this guy is good. See? And the conservative movement, I think, wasn't he the one that started that magazine, National Review? I mean, they don't produce people like that. Basically, in the last 25, 30 years, the conservative movement has been a doormat for right wing fascists and white supremacists. And I think that's a shame. I really do. Mm. Because conservatives have made it very easy for the book burners to hold sway. And you have to remember something. And I know some people will think that I'm trying to be cruel. I'm not. I'm just being real. From my observation, okay, in 71, all right, from my observation, as a whole, the American electorate, they're not that, how should I say, they're not as well informed as they used to be, okay? I would say, when I say used to be, in the 60s and 70s, especially. Um, I think that the greatest, well, maybe not the greatest, the second greatest disaster to hit the United States was Ronald Reagan. And I think that it's kind of like a love-hate thing because he's the one that literally smashed organized labor. And see, that shows you how bright. Remember them hard hats in New York, where I'm from? You had the hard hats out there, "Hey," and Reagan was the one that smashed their damn union, right? He did a number on the American flight industry, civilian, flight industry, which still has not recovered. And talk to air traffic controllers; they'll tell you. See, um, a lot of the programs that help people see. Oh God, how can I put this? The Republicans have gotten into this thing over the last 30 years because all these federal programs, we have to smash them. And then they go and they tell, especially rural whites, um, hey, look at the tax money going to them damn minorities, right? And they get the, you know, their white voters all stirred up. Say, yeah, we got to stop the waste and the abuse. And eventually they get around, they cut the programs. Now, the ironic thing is that many of these white folks, especially in rural America, they they benefited from the programs that Democrats and people of color and women have fought for, and now they don't have it, right? See, this is what I mean when I say that one of the things that has crippled our democracy is the lack of information, right? When you hear some clown, and I do mean clown, in Oklahoma or in Florida, talking about, oh, well, we ain't going to teach history because it's just a big guilt trip by black people. No, man, no, no, no. That's bullshit. Okay. Yeah. You had some very evil white people through the history of this country between 1619 and now. I mean, that's a historical fact. But you also had some very brave, very, very beautiful white Americans, many of whom gave their lives in the cause of justice and equality. And see, this is the joke. This is the trick bag that's played upon white Americans. Listen, this whole thing about what that drunk in the Department of Defense, Hexit, right? And no, I ain't calling him Secretary of War. The Congress changed that. If the Congress wants him to be the Secretary of War, they can damn well, make the proper amendments, paperwork, what have you. Okay. But this guy, he wants to throw out all the chaplains that we have in the military now. And I know what he's up to. He wants to bring in his white nationalists, with their tattoos and all this other bullshit. Their white nationalist Aryan Christian church. See? And, I mean, but I just wonder how long are my white American brothers and sisters going to be played for suckers? Or excuse me, I should say, allow themselves to be played for suckers by the Republican Party. Now, Trump has already played you. He's played you twice, right? And if you are a MAGA person, if you're still a MAGA and you actually believe anything coming out of Trump's mouth or his administration's mouth, I think that you really, I guess I'm the wrong person to talk to you. You need to be speaking to a shrink, seriously, because you are so delusional. You are so far off from reality. It's like you see all your white friends and neighbors standing in line at the food banks. And it hasn't penetrated into your thick skull as of yet, right? Now maybe you need to talk to some of them farmers out there because they fell for that bullshit. Yeah, we're gonna get all these immigrants out of here, criminals and blah blah blah. And then they wake up one morning, they expect to find Ricardo and Hernandez, Sophia, out there in the farmland doing their thing, harvesting crops. But behold, they're not there. Why? Because you voted for an administration that wants to persecute and detain and deport your labor force. And see, that causes a whole lot of things. It's like a machine starts, a whole lot of gears start spinning, like the availability of the harvest, right? And how much it's going to cost. Because if you don't have that low income immigrant labor, well, you go in the supermarkets. I speak to folks in home quite frequently. Okay, it's becoming impossible to live for a working class person to live in the United States. It's becoming impossible for you as a farmer to make any type of profit off of the farmland that might have been your family for 150, 200 years. I mean, since we snatched it from the indigenous people. And you're worried. And it also doesn't help the fact that the guy that you voted for president decides to launch a trade war against the entire planet. And guess what? That ain't going to change. You know why? Tell you why. Because you start playing around with tariffs, okay, with other countries. And you know what these other countries are going to do? Just like when they were having problems, when China had problems with the United States, you know what they did? They got on the phone, dialed a number. A phone phone rings in Brazil. Hey, can you help us? Can you hook us up? We need your crops because the Americans have lost their mind. Boom, there it is. And you know what? Once you screw around with the supply chain for a nation, right? You're screwed because other countries they're not going to trust you anymore. Okay? You have put them in a situation where they say, well, listen, we can't deal with the USA anymore. Because even if they get rid of Trump, what other nut that they might wind up putting in the White House? And, we'll be in the same position. In the Navy, we had a term. Um, Generally, the Navy is a great branch of service, but any organization with human beings are going to have problems. And sometimes you might have it could be a senior enlisted guy, could be an officer, but the person's like a real asshole, you know. So there's a term. You work around that son of a bitch, right, to get things done. And I do fear that that's what's happening to America. America is putting herself, thanks to Mr. Trump, in a situation where the rest of the planet is going to learn to do without. So all you good, solid heartland folks out there in middle America, you better start thinking about that. And somebody's telling you that because you happen to, be a white Christian nationalist, somehow um, the basic laws of nature that apply to everybody else on the planet doesn't have to apply to you. My friends, you are sadly mistaken. Seriously. It's just like this killing spree that Trump and what's his name, Hexbeth, are going on Latin America. And I said this before, I will say it again. Now, you notice when Trump and Hexbeth, when they want to play pirate of the Caribbean, right? They do, landings on oil tankers, right? They don't blow up them oil tankers, right? They send special ops people to rappel down onto the deck of those ships. See? But we have gotten pretty good killing guys in speedboats and fishing boats. Now, that's something having been at sea and knowing what it takes in terms of interdictions and what have you. When I was at the Nimitz, I think we did about what 3 or 4 of those in the Caribbean. And I'm trying to figure out, well, gee, you just land on the oil tankers, but you blow up the fishing boats and the speedboats. I find that so strange. Being a kid from New York, I know all about drug raids. Okay, I know what they do. How they function, right? They get okay. We got this house. Boom. We know it's a cooking house or it's what you call it, a distribution house, what have you, right? Boom. SWAT goes in. They take it down, and then 2 or 3 days later, the mayor will have a big press conference, or the district attorney will have a big press conference, and there'll be a big table, and all the dope, all the money, all the weapons are laid out on that table. Right? And then, of course, everybody got to get their time in the sunlight, get their name in the paper. So you're going to have NYPD, you're going to have DEA. Who else you got? The firearms people, right? The DA, and sometimes even the mayor, right? And all that stuff is laid out there and displayed to tell the voters, hey, this is what these guys did. This is what they found. Here's the evidence. We got the kingpins locked up and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. Now, what I don't understand, you're running around, America's running around, killing guys in little boats that ain't no way in hell it's possible for them to make it to the United States, number one. Number two, the biggest killer with drugs right now is fentanyl, right? Anybody, you freaking buddy, okay? Cop, politician, DEA will tell you fentanyl don't come from Venezuela. Okay? Comes from China, comes up through Mexico, right? It's called smuggling. Americans should be very familiar with that. That's what helped us win our independence from Great Britain, smugglers, right? So, what's up with Venezuela? Why is all this killing necessary? And then you find out, Venezuela apparently sits on just as much, if not more, oil than Saudi Arabia. Hmm, very interesting. And then with this whole, yeah, we got to attack Venezuela because of the fentanyl, which don't exist, right? Our president, our fearless orange god, tells us, I am going to pardon the former president of Honduras, whose greatest claim to fame was that I'm going to shove coke up the nose of every gringo that I can. And for this, see, this is insanity. And this is when I tell people, I come across overseas, right? Here, it's insanity. We have American voters because of racism and because of the mishandling of the economy by the Republican Party have ushered in an age of corruption and insanity. I mean, all you gotta do is just open the damn book, for God's sake. But I know MAGA folks don't like books. They don't like effeminate intellectuals. But that's all you have to really do. And it's madness. It truly is. So you got most of the Sixth Fleet, I guess now they call it SOVCOM, right? Um, ships, machinery, ground pounders, all this crap, right? Off the coast of Venezuela, threatening war for something that you gave a pardon to for the guy that, what was it? I think it's like over 400 tons of coke into the United States. And you're risking the lives of our boys and girls behind this madness. And it's being done by a guy who was able 5 times, great high school athlete, according to him. 5 times he was able, with the help of his father's money, to avoid the draft. Meanwhile, the black and Puerto Rican kids who went to the draft, right, who went to NAM, these are the same guys that Donald Trump said, "Oh well, we have to keep the bastards out of the out of the suburbs." You know, it's just like when I was in what, 72. I lucked out. I got NATO. I was a border guard with NATO, right, on East Germany and Czechoslovakia. My job was to protect refugees trying to come out of the communist Eastern Europe. And these people would escape across the line, right, and come to the United States and move into neighborhoods that I couldn't move into. Now, on the other hand, you had some very brave people who stood up and said, no, the whole America, global, Vietnam, you know, world circling military madness is bullshit. And they stood up, they burned their draft cards, uh, like Muhammad Ali, folks like that. So I have a lot of respect for those folks also, because looking back upon it, what America did in Vietnam and Cambodia was wrong. The people who resisted the draft, they turned out to be right. But see, the thing that I can't stand about Donald Trump is the fact that this son of a bitch, 5 times, he had like a little bone spur. You can't remember which foot it was in. And this asshole dodged the draft, right? Didn't have the guts to be a anti-Vietnam protester. He just took daddy's money and slunk away like a little lying skunk. And nowadays he paints himself as a patriot. This is the same bastard that said in front of a 4-star Marine Corps general walking through the graves of Arlington National Cemetery. Wow, these guys were suckers. What did they do it for? I would say to my so-called patriotic Caucasian brothers and sisters in the heartland who talk about patriotism, this is what you put on our plate, and now you're confused and suffering because he's ripped your life apart. And I don't take any pleasure in my white American brothers and sisters going hungry, losing health care, having their factories, had a couple of factory moves last week, 3,000 people here, 1,500 people over there, closed down. That does not bring joy to my heart. Okay. I'm not some kind of sadist. I just, I just wish that people would start becoming more informed. And see, that's something else that the Democratic Party needs to get off its ass and do something about. There was a time when we had a Congress that stood up against monopolies. Now we have these big tech and media companies combining and basically, with the help of Donald Trump, filtering the news. And that should not be allowed. That's not democratic. Because remember, the airways belong to us, all of us, as Americans. And I think that that's something the Democratic Party definitely. I mean, while they're fighting for health care uh, and decent education, that right, we're supposed to be the premier country on the planet, and we dump the Department of Education. What the hell, people? I just let me chill out. Because sometimes the insanity, it does get to me, right? And I'm trying to tell my white American brothers and sisters, the same people that hold me in contempt, they hold you in the same amount of contempt. And the only hope that we have for the United States is to basically build a decent society. Uh, yeah, everybody talks about when Trump is gone. Listen, Trump being gone, that's not going to help if we don't make up our minds that we have to do something better. Now, I'm not saying change the basics, freedom, justice, freedom of speech, equality, so on and so forth. But this whole like government, and see, that's another thing. You talk about, oh well, Madami, he's a socialist, he's a commie. What the hell do you call it when the president of the United States tells corporations, yo, you're going to kick over 10% to me, right? Now that is USSR if I ever heard of it. See? That's what happens when you don't have an educated populace. And I will dare give this advice. Anytime you have a representative of either party, okay, that shoots down the ideas of education, right? You need to avoid that guy like the freaking plague, okay? Because a representative who really cares about his constituents and about the American people in general, they won't stop fighting until every American has the opportunity to at least gain a 2-year associate's degree or equal uh, technical education or both. You know, if they're not going for that, they're not going for you. Now, as you can imagine, me and old Tom Jefferson, we definitely have some bones to pick, right? But one thing he was right about, in the history of mankind, there has never been a society which is supposed to be about freedom and you got an uneducated populace. Well, actually, I think it was an ignorant populace, all right? That ain't me. That ain't Martin Luther King. That's not Stokely Carmichael or Malcolm X. That's Thomas Jefferson. And you know what? He was right. And we can see just how right he was by looking at what we got sitting in the White House. that band of angels sitting around Trump. See? Now, let me finish up by saying, um, I saw and heard one of the most disturbing things that I've heard since like the early 70s. The vice president of the United States, I guess this was outreach for Nazis, gets up there and says, "Oh, to the effect, oh, well, thanks to Donald Trump, white men don't have to be." What did he say? Hold on a second. I think I wrote that down. Just a second. At that turning point bullshit. And that's what it is, folks. It is bullshit. Okay. Because he was crowing about um, Charlie Kirk and DEI and all this other bullshit. And he was saying that basically, well, a white man doesn't have to be ashamed of being white anymore. And I'm like, where the hell did that come from? you know, nobody ever asked white folks to be ashamed. Only thing, generally speaking, the civil rights movement basically said that this is America. Black folks essentially built it. I know a lot of, there are some people in America that don't like to hear that, but history speaks for itself. By 1860, the amount of slaves in the United States was worth more than all the banks, steamships, railroad lines, and factories in America. Don't take my word for it, look it up. So when black folks talk about, hey man, we built this country. So for most, I would say basically what they're saying is correct. Seriously. Because everything that this country has, it got out of slavery. It built Virginia, what, tobacco? It built the South, cotton, rice, indigo. Those were the major crops. Sorry, that's what happened. And with the money that came out of that, you had investments. And, Southerners should not feel that they're being picked on because many a northern bank, some of which exist to this very day, got their start, right? Investing, insurance companies, right? In New York City, where I'm born and raised, see? Um, Wall Street. Know what they used to do at Wall Street? They used to have their slave auctions there, right? So this is what bugs me about people like that asshole governor that got in Florida that said we don't want anybody to learn history because it'll make them feel bad. Jesus, man, you must have had a real sheltered life. Uh, how about the fact that was it your grandma or great grandma? They almost kicked her out of the country because she was terrified they'd find out that she was pregnant. Hmm? Because they didn't want Italian breeding over here. See, and for people to grow and learn, they have to know the truth. So when I hear the vice president saying that to like what 98% white audience, my question that comes to my mind is, what do you want to do? You want to fight? Hmm? That doesn't, it doesn't frighten me. We survived coming over here, being brought over here. We survived the Middle Passage. We survived chattel slavery. We survived Jim Crow. We survived the lynchings and the burnings of our neighborhoods. I mean, what are you trying to do? I mean, Mr. Vice President Vance, with your pretty brown wife, which, quite frankly, and a guy being a former Marine, I don't think that you've done a very good job standing up for her honor, quite frankly. Um, I don't like to get, I really don't like getting into, people's personal relationships. But when you feel the time to parade her out there in the front, you kind of leave yourself open for that. And I have yet to see you stand up and denounce the people that have attacked your wife and your mixed children. And for that, as a fellow veteran, I feel pretty sorry for you. You were the guy that said that Donald Trump was another Hitler. Yet look at where you're at now. So what does that say about you as a Marine, as a man? What does that say about you and your character? And you think because you go out and you tell a bunch of uneducated, right, uninformed, young white people, especially young white males, that, hey, you don't have to be ashamed to be white anymore. You like waving red flags in front of bulls. I look at you people with your white Christian nationalist bullshit. And I ask myself, I really doubt your sanity. Don't ask for, let me put it to you like this. Don't ask for shit that you don't want to have to deal with. That's my warning to you. Now, there are some of us who want to try and build the United States, or I should say rebuild it, just like Lincoln said at the Gettysburg Address. Don't create a situation where that becomes impossible. Seriously. Now I'm here trying to get set up, have a business, but I'm an American. I do plan on coming home. I would like to know I have a home to come back to and that is not torn to pieces by racial riots, um, by a fascist crew like those bastards in ICE, and Americans killing each other in the streets. That's why I say, Mr. Vance, you are not fit to be president. And as a matter of fact, if you want to talk about DEI, you are a prime example of how DEI helped white young men. Because, and I say this no disrespect, but you come from a place where the elites call people like you appy trash, right? I know you're familiar with the term appy trash, right? It's right up there with trailer park trash. That's what the elites think about people like you. You got lucky. You joined the Corps. You got away from your origin, so to speak. And then you wrote a nice book. And then, or either you wrote the book either before or after you had the opportunity to go to Harvard. Look in the mirror, ask yourself, guys who come from places like where you come from, they don't ordinarily walk around the campuses of Harvard. How do you think you got there? Right? Because some people, some program that give guys like you a break did exactly that and gave you a break. And ever since then, all you have done, you have cashed in on your origins and you have basically betrayed the people who you originate from. And now, because you think that it will help you politically, you pal around with fascists and racists. And you think that most Americans are too stupid to figure out that you're nothing but you're a flip-flop, right? Now I know politicians from time to time change their minds, but hey, baby, you've gone from oh well, he's a Hitler in the making to he's the greatest president America's ever had. That is one hell of a flip-flop. So when you talk about telling white guys, "Hey, you don't have to be ashamed of being white," no one ever asked them to. Quite frankly, I don't give a shit if you like me or not, but you will respect me, and you will follow the laws accordingly, or there will be hell to pay. Now you can take that any way you want, but you need to get your head out your ass before you start talking about being, the success of the Trump. Mr. Vice President, you have a very happy Christmas. The rest of you folks out there, same to you. Have a good holiday season. Peace. Keep reading. Take care of each other, and bless us all.